What a treat. I'm here with my friend, DJ Paris, host of Keeping It Real podcast, and all around awesome human. DJ, we've been planning this for a long time. I'm so glad we can have this conversation.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I am as big a fan of yours, and you inspire me in a lot of different ways, and I'm excited to talk to your audience.
Your podcast is very specific, and it's about excellence in real estate. And one thing that I'm fascinated by is just excellence in general. And there's I think it's Kaizen, it's the Japanese philosophy. How you do something is how you do everything. And I absolutely love that. I think I just see it more and more amongst anyone that I admire is they do have excellence in so many different aspects of their life.
Yeah, I agree. Kaizen, that's that Japanese principle of like never-ending self-improvement. And there's a fine line too, because I know for me, when I started down the self-improvement path, when I was like 18 or 19 and, was reading a lot of books. And what I've learned is that I can overfocus on it as well. Like I can get to a point where nothing's ever good enough. So that's something that I've had to learn is how to appreciate where I'm at in the process and still want more, as opposed to, I used to look at myself as kind of like this broken toy that needed fixing. So it's like, how do I fix myself? And it's like, oh, okay, I don't have to fix myself anymore. I just have to cope with some of my challenges and continue to move forward, as opposed to thinking like, that's going to fix me. If I just add this, if I just do this, if I just achieve X, then I'll be happy. And it has not really worked that way for me. It's been more about I know it's sort of, people say this, it's a bit of a trope that the journey is really where it's at, but it seems to be the truth. So the journey for me is really where the juice is. The goal itself is rarely for me. In fact, there's been a lot of times when I've achieved things that were lifetime dreams even, and I get horribly depressed afterwards. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And you have achieved a lot. And I'm curious, when you were Golden Glove winner and of course, jiu-jitsu guy, and you've run marathons. Have you ever had that experience where you achieve something and it actually bums you out?
Brother, I'm so glad. I was waiting to jump in because that is so true. And it may be cheesy, but that expression, it's all about the journey. That is so true. And I'll give you a perfect analogy. I'm 44 years old. And if I still have so many things I'm trying to achieve in my life. If I got a piece of paper and I wrote down 10 or 20 of my wildest dreams that I'd love to accomplish, if I wait until I'm 64 to be happy, until I've achieved them all, I've missed my life. And I just had that realization a few months ago. I was like, it really is about the journey. And I think humans are happiest. And I think psychology, this is agreed pretty widely, is we're happiest when we're progressing towards something, not when we achieve it. So and also what you said, DJ, is so important about not trying to be perfect. I remember when I wanted to start this podcast and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't feel very confident. And someone said to me, like, you just got to go. You can't wait. Is a podcaster that I respected a lot and I've been listening to for many years. And he said, Lawrence, you're going to look back when you're on episode 50 and you're going to cringe at the first 5. That's the whole point. Is that every creator, if you're writing a book, you can't do 100 rewrites that's perfect. You got to do a couple and then just get it out there.
Yeah, it's kind of like doing a pull-up. For anyone listening out there, if you've attempted a pull-up, it is one of the more challenging moves in the gym, at least for me, it is. And it took me a good couple of years before I could even knock out one pull-up. And now I can do several of them. But it never gets easier, but I'm able to see progress, right? Like it gets easier in the sense of I'm able to do more, but I'm still striving for, now I can do like 8 pull-ups. Well, I'd like to be able to do 10. Now, what does that really mean to my life? Nothing really. Like the difference between doing 8 pull-ups and 10 pull-ups, like who cares? But for me, it's trying something hard. And the only thing that I've found that works for me in my life is doing really hard things that are painful, healthy pain, like painful in a good way, that allow me to learn new things. The only thing is to dive right into the pain. If I'm willing to withstand whatever the discomfort of, doing a pull-up. By the way, one of the pull-ups I do now that is really discomforting is an isometric hold. So I pull myself up and I have to hold. And for some reason, that must activate like a fight or flight response, because if I'm dangling, maybe it's like hanging off the side of a cliff or something, my brain freaks out a bit. But that's really hard for me. And again, logically, it's foot off the ground. But the reality of it is, it's like, oh my God, I just have to hang on. But everything is hard. I think that I grew up thinking everything was going to be easy. It turns out, in my experience, everything is hard, but hard is where the juice is.
Brother, yes. And I just had this wonderful, when you get to your 40s, it's hard to find things that you haven't found already that give you lasting increase in happiness in life. And one thing I recently did is get a cold plunge. And I did it for the pure benefits of the health benefits. Like it's good for lean body composition. And exactly. Yeah. But what I didn't realize is I got this incredible appreciation for time because I get in that thing. It's set to 39 degrees. I hate the mornings. I do it not first thing. I normally do a few things first and then I do it earlier in the day. I get in that thing and those 3 minutes actually go by very quickly. And it makes me realize, man, if I'm shivering and miserable and cold in this thing and my time is going by quickly, how much is my life going by? And I found the happiness benefit from a cold plunge has been so strong, which I never expected. I thought it was just purely suffering for my body, to be in better shape. And what you said is something that I think I just did a story about it the other day after a long run on Saturday. It's so true. Discomfort is where life is. You don't enjoy putting your feet up and watching a Netflix show if you've done nothing but watch TV all day and been a slob. But if you've done some things that pushed you and given you discomfort before, then you really appreciate those things in life. So there's so much wisdom in what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, it's that old expression. It's like an old Zen koan or whatever they call them, where it's like before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's just like keep on the path. But you're right. It's funny. Like, even though I can do more pull-ups now than I could before and push-ups and all the different things in the gym, it's never easy. It's easier in the sense that I can do the movements, but if I'm doing it right, it's just as hard as the first day I did it because I'm just doing more of them. And so it's never fun. And I battle with resistance. Or what I call resistance, that little voice that says, give up, quit, go relax, go take it easy. I battle that every moment of the day almost. So that's the battle I have to win. I always think it's like, that story of Sisyphus where it's not exactly the real story of Sisyphus, but basically the boulder falls down the hill. He's condemned to push the boulder up the hill every day and then it falls down at night. But that's kind of like how I feel life works in a lot of ways. We just got to get to work and it's going to kind of suck. As far as pain tolerance, you're going to have to withstand pain, but that's where all of the joy comes in. If your body really and brain reward you, if nothing else, if society doesn't reward you, your brain and body will reward you for doing hard things.
EJ, I think you just brought something, you just put two and two things together. I think it was Albert Camus, the great French existentialist, and he said, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. So he's basically being happy in his discomfort. And I think that's what he meant. I never put those two things together, but I think that's what he's saying.
Well, I love Camus, and I did not know he said that. So that is a great thing that I just learned. That is awesome. Yeah, I wish it was the opposite. I wish the pleasure was where everything. I wish being comfortable would be where growth is, but darn it, we're not built that way. It's much of a bummer as it is. So, and we live in such a comfortable, well, at least here in the Western, world, in the United States, at least, we have so much comfort. Everything is kind of done for us. Temperature, food, we don't have to do much we don't even have to leave our homes anymore. Now everybody delivers everything. And yeah, I think too, like being in community is really important, I think, for success and excellence, not working in a vacuum and not being around other people face to face. I'm curious on, you're a realtor as well, and you are your own business. How do you stay connected to other people like your friends and your family?
I'm so lucky that my wife, Jen, and I, we just had this conversation that we are both so blessed that we feel like we have more friends. We want to have more time to see our friends. We have an abundance of wonderful people in our life. And I think it's just looking at just on my side, I've had 3 separate careers, right? I'm in real estate now and development. I still do jiu-jitsu. So I have the huge community of jiu-jitsu. I have the real estate community. Before I was a professional fighter, so I still have my fighting friends. And then before that, I was a trader. And when you're in the trading pit, you have that very close knit, 80 people packed into a small trading pit. So I've always been around people. And even one of my biggest fears is moving to Indiana is I live in, an hour south of Chicago with no traffic, sometimes an hour 20 south. And I'm on 8 acres and there's not many people around. And I'm a city boy. I'm from London. I've been in Chicago 21 years. My biggest fear of moving was exactly what you said. Like, am I going to be lonely if I'm working from home? But I'm still going to the gym. I go to a gym in Indiana. I go to my gym in Chicago for jujitsu. I still see my friends when I can. I'm still seeing clients for real estate. So I still have so much connection, but that's definitely something that all the things I've read and heard people talk about, successful people, they say when it's all said and done, when you're on your deathbed, what really matters? Is it the prestige and the achievements? No, it's about the connection and the people you have in your life. And that's something that it's so hard to do when you're busy, because I'm not immune to it. And I love what you said. I think it's so important for people to hear you and I saying that it's not easy for us every day to go towards the things that are difficult, but that's what life's about. It's the same for being social. As you get older, even if I didn't have a toddler who takes so much of my time and energy, it's hard. Like in the evening after a long day of work, do you really want to get up, shower, change, drive to dinner, see your friends? I always have fun when I get there, but the inertia to get my ass up at the end of a long day is very difficult. And I think that's but it's so important because of what you just said, that connection. Life is about connection. We're social creatures.
Yeah, agreed. I have that same thing. Anytime I have a social event, I just know the way my brain works is it about an hour before the event, my brain is going to start saying, you don't want to go. You want to relax. You don't have to go to this. It's not worth your time. And I have to hear that and go, that's just an old pattern I run. I'm not going to try to defeat it. It's just what happens. But I notice it. And I've been studying DBT for several years, which has allowed me more control over my urges and my responses. But I'm able to notice, DJ, and I even talk to myself in the third person a little bit, which helps get me some distance away from this feeling of not wanting to go. So I say, DJ's doing that thing where he doesn't want to go. That's totally normal. That's the pattern he runs. But we're going to push through it, because when DJ comes home from that event, he's going to be very grateful that he went, because I know for sure that if I go, like you were saying, I will get the benefit. So, and it's okay to stay home too, obviously. But if it's something I know that's healthy for me, look, I don't want to do push-ups either, right? Like I don't want to do a pull-up either. I never want to do a pull-up. I never want to do a squat. I don't want to do those things, but I know I should do them to get the benefit. And so I always say, it's funny. I've been working out now for like 3.5 years, and which is so funny because I really never did prior with any sort of consistency. And I have a trainer, and so she makes sure I'm doing things the right way. But it's so funny because I go, when I tell people I work out, if it comes up, they go, "Oh, you must really like it now." I'm like, not really, but I don't need to like it. I just need to do it. And so some things in life, they're just not fun. They're kind of a pain in the butt, but they're a really good idea. And I've always learned you don't have to change the way you feel about something as long as you're willing to change what you're doing. Like you can still hate working out, but just work out, And so not everything has to be easy. And I do have a bit of worry for the younger generations, and I'm hoping their brains will adapt to this, but they're getting everything they want, at least entertainment wise, at the we have it too, on our phones. They get anything they want served up to them at any point. And I just worry that will give them a poor template for how things really work in life. Like things aren't just served up to you in most cases. So I do have some concern about that. But yeah, hard work, unfortunately, is the key in my life.
Wait, DJ, you said, was it DBT?
Yeah, it stands for dialect. Actually, I'll talk about it now just for a moment. It's really interesting. So it was founded by a woman named Marsha Linehan. She medical doctor, I believe. But anyway, so in psychotherapy, and anyone who's listening who's in the mental health field can attest to this. People who have what are known as personality disorders, specifically things like borderline personality, which I am not a mental health professional, so I don't know exactly what borderline personality is. What I do know about it is incredibly difficult to treat and almost impossible. And so this woman wanted to figure out a way to help some of these people that were kind of unhelpable. And their psychology hadn't figured out a way to help those people. They have a hard time identifying emotions. So anyway, what she did is she put together these skills based on science, based on what the data says with respect to 4 different things. And this is, I think, really helpful. So even for all of you listening, by the way, I do not have a personality disorder, I don't think. I've never been diagnosed with one. So people can study this even if you're not, and if you don't have borderline personality disorder, you should be very grateful because that is a very, very difficult thing to deal with. But for all the rest of us who just want to learn additional skills, and me in particular, the 4 different modules are mindfulness. And what mindfulness means is being aware of what's going on within you so that you can, make adjustments when needed. The second would be distress tolerance. What happens when you're in distress? How do you soothe yourself so that you can, get better access to all of your resources? Because when we're in distress, we don't have access to all of our faculties. Emotional regulation is a third one. So that's also learning how to dial emotions up and down, learning to identify them, learning what emotions mean. Is there action I need to take? Is there non-action to take? And then the last thing is interpersonal effectiveness, which has to do with having difficult conversations with people, asking for what you want, telling somebody no, all of these things that are tough. So it's all about, these are actual just life skills. And so anyway, I don't mean to go on and on about it, but I started studying. It's very difficult to get into a DBT course these days. It's very popular. I think I had to wait about 1.5 years to get into a Northwestern program. And I was very lucky to study with their instructors. And again, I wanted to learn emotional regulation because for me in particular, or distress tolerance is probably a better example. I would get very activated and, something would anger me or make me sad or scared. And then I would be in that emotion and I didn't have an easy way out. I didn't know how to adjust. I thought, well, that was just my reality. I'm scared. I didn't know that there was an escape hatch. And I didn't even know why you would want to take the escape hatch. I thought maybe it was noble to stay in fear or it was the right thing to do. And what I learned is the science is really clear that when we activate like that with stimulus, something happens. We respond in a way. If it's an activated state, that's typically what's known as activating the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or the flight response. So there's more than just fight or flight. It's like fight, flight, fawn, freeze. You guys can look up that, but it's basically your body is being put in survival mode at that point. So your body is identifying some stimulus as a threat, and obviously in hundreds of thousands of years ago, it could be an animal chasing us, whatever, but it's a life or death sort of situation, the way the brain is interpreting. Now, in our modern society here, we hopefully don't have to deal with a lot of life and death experiences, but our brains are still wired to react that way. So what happens when you get into this sort of, when you activate your sympathetic nervous system is many other parts of your body and brain shut down because it has to conserve energy. It wants to preserve your resources so you can survive. So your sexuality goes away when you're in a fight or flight. Your ability to reasonably think things through. You do not have access to parts of the brain. It restricts your metabolism, all sorts of really interesting things. Your heart rate, it goes up because it needs to keep you alive. So it's just a survival mechanism, but it's not particularly helpful when, somebody cuts you off in traffic and all of a sudden, you're angry because, somebody did a jerky thing. So what DBT will teach is how to actually recognize that's happening, allow it to happen, and also have a coping mechanism so that you're not, running the guy off the road who just got in front of you. You're actually able to calm down because what's funny? I'll stop in just a second, but I learned this from, of all people, I don't know this person, so it's going to sound like I'm dropping a name, but I learned this in a course that LeBron James, I don't know nothing about sports. I know he's a big basketball guy, but he taught this course. I literally don't know who he is, but I know he's a big deal. And he was talking about this in a meditation course, and I don't know anything about meditation, but he was saying, he goes, I had to learn meditation because on the court, I can't afford to get angry. Because if I get angry, I'm going to make mistakes. He goes, I just won't play as well. My team won't play as well. And I'm paid very handsomely to be in control. So I have to, no matter what happens on that court, be in control. I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds good, but how do you do that? Well, that's where DBT came in and allows me to do this. So anyway, that's so if anyone out there is struggling with emotional regulation, addiction, things like that, where you're in an emotion and you can't seem to get out of it, DBT is a great way to learn those skills.
EJ, that was beautiful. And this is the reason I wanted to talk to you today, because when I had the pleasure of talking on your podcast about real estate a couple of times, I found that over half the conversation wasn't even about real estate. It was about things like this, about life. And the idea of emotional regulation, it's so funny. My son is about to turn 3, and you see a toddler has zero emotional regulation, right? He goes from happy to screaming to sad to all these different things. And I look at myself now and I'm like, man, I've been guilty of that too. It just happened to me the other day. I was negotiating a deal and the agent called me and he talks to me in this like very kind of, almost like he's talking to a child, very condescending manner. And he starts explaining like, well, my seller will do this and my seller will do that. And I'm like, bro, we already agreed to all this. It's like 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. I don't have time for this shit. And I kind of not, didn't yell at him, but I was kind of, I felt like exactly what you're saying. I felt my heart rate increasing, my blood boiling. I wanted to tell him to go fuck himself. I had those feelings. And I had to do a bit of emotional regulation myself. And the funny thing is, it's just back to what you said about life being too easy and you worry about the younger generation. I do as well. But you got to think we have those exact same, we have the same emotions and the same hormones and the same, our bodies are used to fighting animals, like literally fighting each other, fighting the neighborhood tribes for survival, fighting for everything we have. And now we're in the civilized world where you don't actually have to fight for anything. And so a lot of it gets repressed and it causes all these problems. So the fact that you're so self-reflective and you realize that you wanted to work on this stuff is incredible. And I love the idea of that response time because I've got a really good friend of mine who told me, he said, Lawrence, like, you need more stillness in your life. And I said, I like the fact that I have passions because I'm a passionate person. And this is exactly what he meant though. He meant stillness where you increase the time from stimulus to response. And that's something like, I know I used to get a tiny bit of road rage when I was younger. Now I don't get it at all because every time it happens, I just think, man, that guy could be rushing to hospital for his sister. She could have had a car crash, or he could be rushing home because his baby's having something. So just having that mindfulness, but you have to remind yourself every time it happens because when you're driving, the instinct of the anger is because most people think they're driving and they're relaxed, but without even subconsciously, you're already at a 7 out of 10 because one bad second decision, you're going to crash the car if you're going 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, so, you better be at a 7 out of 10 or else.
Exactly. This is trouble. So I absolutely love that. And DJ, back to your point, I just got recommended a book and I just listened to the audiobook last week. It's by Arthur Brooks, who I haven't read his work, but I think he's a famous self-help guy. And it's called From Strength to Strength. And it was so interesting because it talks about what we were just talking about earlier about the need to be improving. And he gives I don't know if it's a made up story to prove his point or a real story. He claims it's a real story, but he said he was on a flight in business class and he heard this old man behind him talking to his wife. And he was like kind of being very depressed and negative. And he was like, I don't know why I even bother to live anymore. My life's kind of over. There's nothing else good coming. My body's falling apart. And then as they get off the plane, he doesn't say who it is, but he realizes the guy was a very, very well-known, famous figure who had achieved great things in his youth. And as he was getting off the plane, one of the pilots was just getting out, and the pilot saw him and said, "Wow, you really inspired me when I was young, and I've looked up to you for a long time." And he was kind of beaming with pride, and he said, "Thank you so much." And then as he left, Arthur Brooks is saying, "Who is the real person? Is it the one in public that's depressed because he's kind of at the end of his life, or is it the person basking in praise for the things he's accomplished?" And I think the theme of the book is a lot of people that achieve great things in life, they're not very happy because say you're a 28-year-old Olympian, you win the gold medal in the Olympics, you represent your country, you have fame and money and all these amazing things. Yes, of course, you can parlay that into being a motivational speaker or a coach or all these other things, but your life probably peaked at that time. And I know exactly how that felt because I felt at 35 years old, my life peaked. It was my last MMA fight. I had been very, very wealthy from trading in my 20s. I had blown most of it living life and enjoying life, thinking, I'll go back to the trading floor, make more money. And then I had a really bad year trading. I lost a whole bunch of money, broke up with a living girlfriend. And I was like, Jesus Christ. I remember midnight taking my 2 dogs for a walk on the lakefront. And I remember thinking, my life will never be what it was. I'll never be that. I reached a physical peak, absolute physical peak, training since I was 13 years old. And I was 22 years of hard work to achieve this physical peak. I retired from fighting. I'll never get back there. I've been wildly wealthy in my youth and I've lost almost everything. I'm almost at zero again. And, I've gotten a woman in my life. I don't know if I want kids. And I remember being so depressed. And the one thing I remember thinking was, I wasn't suicidal, but I remember understanding why people end their life.
Totally.
And I remember thinking, well, if there's one reason to keep going, it's I got these 2 lovely dogs and hang out with my dogs. And of course, I'm so much happier today than I was then. I was just looking at it wrong because success is not about having zeros in the bank account or having the prestige of winning fights in front of people in a pair of Lycra shorts. I get so much happiness now about just having a nice conversation with my wife, or like my son comes up to me and says, Dada, and gives me a hug. You know, it's these little things in life. And I think the older I get, the more I appreciate. Number one, it's the little things in life that gives you its meaning. But the other thing is the Arthur Brooks book. It really got me thinking. We have to do things. We have to find new passions. I've always been a sport guy, physical guy. And now I'm getting older. I'm hopefully still going to do some athletic things, but they're not going to be, my body's not going to be the same. So I've got to find intellectual or some kind of things to do where I'm still improving to get that happiness. Whether it's like you hear, I think one of the Russian, either Tolstoy or Dostoevsky or one of those guys, I think he started playing like the violin in his 70s or 80s or something crazy like that. And it's like finding these things that give you so much happiness and you're improving, and you can do them way, way later in life. And I think that's what I realized reading that book is it's so important. And as you get older and you can't do the same things, or you no longer have the interest, you have to find those new things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think an easy way for anyone that is currently listening who maybe doesn't have a passion, I would encourage you to, as Lawrence was talking about, stillness, I would encourage you to sit quietly and try to turn off the devices for minutes at a time. I know that could be difficult even for most of us, but just sit and sort of see what bubbles up. It's not like necessarily you'll have this massive insight, but if you don't make space for your passions to arise, I'll give you a different metaphor. So for anyone who plays music, we know it's not the notes that make music, it's the space between the notes, right? If music was just one continuous sound, it wouldn't really be music. It's the space, it's the distance between the notes that actually creates the melody and the sound. And so same thing with I believe our passion, our creativity, we have to allow it to bubble forth. I don't know that you need to sit, on the side of a mountain and be a yogi to do that. But even if you just took 2 minutes a day to do that, you'd probably be doing yourself a world of good. And you might find that an interest just pops up. And the other thing I'll say too is realize that our devices, phones, computers, tablets, video games, all of these things, I have no issue with any of them, but realize that they are designed to get your attention, right? They're designed to get you into a consumer mindset. You are being entertained. You are being, maybe you're somewhat participating, but someone else is doing all the heavy lifting to entertain you. I would limit your access to being entertained. I think that is a really, really dangerous path because it is so incredibly addictive. It's so dialed into exactly what we want and how our brains are wired. It's really, really hard to step away from it.
Brother, I could not agree more. And I've recently done that thing that people talk about where you're just mindlessly on Insta, because there's a lot of interesting, unique stuff or just silly stuff that keeps your attention, where you're scrolling on Instagram for, you think it's 1 minute and it's 30 minutes go by and you just don't feel good after. It's not a healthy way to live life. And like you said, there's a great documentary, I'm blanking on the name, but most of the founders that created this technology don't let their kids anywhere near it because they know just how bad it is. And it's, any time that I don't have access for long periods of time, I get so much happiness. I'll give you an example. I went to Antarctica. I ran marathons on 6 of the 7.
I know, it's amazing.
But, thank you for that. I was like, I got to do the 7. And on that trip, it's one of the most remote places on Earth. There's no internet service. And there was 2 couples that spent the week there with us. And one was an Israeli businessman and his wife, and the other one was from the United Arab Emirates, a businessman and his wife. And they were in both, one was in his late 40s, one was in his late 50s, wildly successful. Like the Dubai businessman, great guy. He had a company, I think he had over 14,000 employees. He did waste management for the whole of the United Arab Emirates. And he was wildly successful, hanging out with the crown prince, very, very, a lovely, lovely man. But he was under so much stress from just constant connection with people. He told me, he said he loved going to Antarctica. He loves going to remote places. And one of the reasons he loves going is because there's no cell service and he gets peace. And he has to go to the most remote places in the world just to get peace, DJ. And it says, it was incredible. And that was the only time since I've been in real estate that I had a real extended period of just no connection. I think it was like 7 or 8 days. And I remember being on the plane and I'd had people covering my work and everything, but I had this one issue. and I was trying to get it resolved, and the plane was leaving Cape Town, and I knew I wouldn't have any service for 8 days, and it wasn't really getting resolved. And I was like, well, fuck it, that's it, I'm off. I turned my phone off, and that was it. And it was funny turning it back on, hundreds of messages and everything, but it felt so nice to get that break. And I think when you're young, you got to do what it takes to have success in business. But as soon as you start to get some success, you have to put yourself first, because you're going to be your best in every area of your life if you look after yourself. And what you said, there's so much wisdom to that. I worry, I don't know about you. I got my first cell phone at 21, I think I was. And then I actually moved to Amsterdam. Then I got a Dutch cell phone when I was 22. Then I moved to Chicago when I was 23. And I remember being like, you know what? I'm sick of getting new phones. Back then, you didn't really need it as much. I had a year with no cell phone, and it was beautiful. And then eventually I was like, it was getting a bit hard to survive in life as an adult without a cell phone. But it sucks that we need this constant connection. And in so many businesses, you know what it's like. Maybe you don't. But in real estate, people do expect you. I go to the gym for an hour and I don't answer my phone. I'll have the same client who's emailed me, called me, texted me, and left me a voicemail. And it's like, bro, it's been an hour, 25 minutes. Like, you can just be a bit patient. Just text me, call me back when you're free. But people have this desire to have you constantly available. And I'm very available for a broker, but you have to take those breaks for your sanity. You absolutely have to.
Well, and you can't even blame consumers, because they're used to getting what they want instantly. I mean, look, we don't even wait more than 2 days for a delivery anymore for most things, right? In some cases, Amazon will deliver it same day, next day. And, that becomes very attractive and very endearing, and what we expect, when we, our Uber pulls up and we get in, and we expect it just to go and to the destination. And we don't have to tell the driver anything. We can keep our earbuds in. We're really used to lots of automation in our life, and especially around being entertained. And so it's tough, but I encourage people to carve out some time in their day, whether it's just a couple of minutes, but really, disconnecting, checking in with yourself, seeing what's going on, because I believe creativity comes from within. At least it always has worked that way for me. I was a writer for a lot of my life. I wrote, and I would have to sit there in silence to have something come up, because I would stare at a blank piece of paper every day and go, I don't know what I'm supposed to put on here. So, but I would trust that something would come. And it usually was crappy at first, like you were saying at the beginning about getting started and not being a perfectionist. I just read a book by, for those YouTubers out there, that wasn't by Mr. Beast, but it was the guy who manages Mr. Beast, or his marketing guy. And he was saying that Mr. Beast, he's like one of the biggest guys on YouTube. He was saying that just assume your first 100 videos are going to be absolute garbage, but go ahead and put them out. You're going to learn from each one. You're going to get better and better and better and better. But we live in such an instant society now that I think this idea of hard work, discipline, not getting the result right away is a little bit, it's not as obvious to kids these days.
Yeah, the idea of putting stuff out that you're going to look back on in years and cringe, I think it's so important. It's, Chicago guys, there's that famous quote by Michael Jordan, I've missed 10,000 shots in my career. That's why he's the greatest. And if you look at, I was just started watching the amazing Beckham documentary on Netflix. So David Beckham was the guy in my youth. He was like this real famous soccer player. And I didn't realize I'm not really a soccer guy. I've always been a combat sports guy. And I thought he got a lot of the fame just because he was a handsome guy and he had, sponsorship deals with clothing brands and all that. And he married the Spice Girl, but he was an incredible soccer player. And he trained his dad was an absolute fanatic and had him just practicing all day from when he was, 3 or 4 years old. And he got a lot of shit because in one of the World Cup games, he got a red card, he got sent off, and then England had to play with one less player and they ended up losing to Argentina. And one thing that I loved about him is he always stepped up to the plate. And if you look at the highest level soccer games in these World Cups, when you come to penalties, literally your whole country is behind you. If you miss a penalty, the amount of pressure on a penalty shootout is insane. And you'll see these absolute world-class studs, and they'll just shake their head. They don't want to take them because they're kind of, and it's the guys that step up in life. I think that's such a good lesson for anyone listening, for any young people, is be the guy who steps up. Don't worry about failure. Failure makes great men. And if you look at the dating world, I was just talking to my wife yesterday about this. She's a relationship therapist, and she's a therapist, but she does a lot of relationship counseling. And there's this incredible statistic where it's something like 35% of young men have never approached a woman in person, never. And it's just, they're just scared of rejection. And that's why you have this huge huge proportion of young people that want to be in fulfilling relationships and they just can't meet people. And part of them, there's a bunch of problems, but part of the problem is they're scared of rejection. And it's like, man, that's one thing I'm so proud of, DJ, is you'll be, maybe Michael Jordan's failed more than me, but you'll be hard pressed to find someone who's failed more than me. I've failed a lot in life, but I've also succeeded too.
Yeah, and I think we need to make sure we put dumb mistakes in that same category of failure, because sometimes failure, to some people, it's like, well, you tried really hard and it didn't happen. No, sometimes failure is you just screw up, and that's okay too, right? Like I screw up all the time. I literally just don't get something accomplished that I set out to, or I fall short on one of my habits or disciplines. Yeah, we're not perfect. We're not supposed to be. And so, yeah, this idea of just getting okay with failure is one of the great struggles of life. And if you can just get a little bit more okay with discomfort, with failure, boy, you're going to go places. Because like you were saying, Lawrence, you know, you're a very successful person. You've been successful in sport, in business, in several different businesses, different industries, all at a very young age. You know how important it is just to do the work, right? You know, people who make it to, and, you know, you've done MMA, you've done boxing, you're doing jujitsu, you've run marathons. You know that, yes, maybe there's a genetic advantage you have based on, you know, what your parents passed down, but you still have to do all the heavy lifting and all of the work that it takes to achieve those goals. And it's usually not the smartest people that sort of get to the top of the mountain. In my experience, it's the people that outwork the other guy.
Yeah, a lot of people that have the genetic gifts, they do well up to a certain amount, and then as soon as they're not used to failing, so as soon as they had some hardships, a lot of them really struggle to come back.
Resiliency. That's the thing you want to build in life. You don't want bad things to happen, but they're going to happen anyway. So you might as well learn how to cope with stuff, because coping with it is where you build strength. It's just like, you know, in the gym, like I have to tear down my muscles to build new ones. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. So I have to be, and to tear down muscles requires a lot of work and discipline and pain. And I don't like it. You know, I don't like doing it, but I do it. And because I want to live a long life. And also I know that pain is actually the best thing for me.
But DJ, don't you think so? You said you still, you know, people say, oh, do you like working out? And you're like, well, not really. It's not. I like the feeling after and the effects.
Yeah.
And I think it's so, like, I want to say this for anyone that's listening. You know, David Goggins is widely known as one of the most savage people on this earth out of 7 billion people. And he talks about stuff like, you know, he sits by the door with his running shoes for 30, 40, 50 minutes sometimes. And he's like, I'm a procrastinating motherfucker because I don't want to go. That's David Goggins. And I know exactly how he feels. Sometimes I want to do a long run on Sunday and I'll do it. You know, I want to do it early, and it's 5 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock. I'm doing some stuff with my son. I'm finishing up some work emails, and I'll fucking go out sometimes, DJ, at 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. I run at 1 in the morning because I know I'm not going to go to sleep until I do it, and I'll procrastinate for whatever reason. It's not easy. So when you said, I have the genetic component, I do to a degree, I must do. But I remember so many like people, like ex-girlfriends in my life that would say to me, oh, it's easy for you to work out. It's not easy for me. And I'm like, really? It's easy? Do you know how it feels when everything in your body hurts and you've already trained twice and you've got to go back for hard sparring in the evening when it's the last thing you want to do? And I've sat in my car. I've done this recently where I've driven to the jiu-jitsu gym. Everything hurts and I'm exhausted. I had a horrible night's sleep. And I'll sit in the car and I'm like, you know what? I'm here. I'm going to go home. He's like, I'm just not feeling it today. I can have a day off. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go in. I'm just going to do the warm up, and maybe I'll just teach a few people that I won't really train hard. And then you go, and once you're in, you're changed. You end up doing it. Yeah. But it happens to me. It's like, it's a never ending battle, but you and I know how we feel after that. I think that's the lesson to remember is it's not just doing hard things. It's doing hard things that you don't want to do. It gives you that mental resilience that you can apply to anything in life. Like you apply it to the gym, you can apply it to making hard calls with annoying clients that you don't want to call. You have that same muscle, the resilience muscle, but also we know how we feel after. And I think there's so much wisdom in that, yeah, do the hard things because you know after you'll feel good. And that's what I always think about. I know I don't feel like going running today, but you know what? I know I'm going to feel good after.
Yeah, you're doing your future self a favor is really what you're doing. You're saying, okay, even though I don't want to do this, I care enough about myself. It really is the ultimate act of self-love. And I'm not suggesting that if you can't do it or you give yourself a day off or you fail one day, you just can't find this. Yes, we all have that. And there are days where I don't do the thing I'm supposed to do. Of course, of course. But that's okay. We're imperfect. It's all right to be imperfect. But you're right. It's just a matter of finding that next mountain. I was listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's 76, I believe. And he was talking about his body is now breaking down. And he says it's really a bummer because, he was Mr. World and he had all of those various titles and weightlifting, and then he became the biggest action star in Hollywood, and obviously governor, and all sorts of other amazing things he's done. And he says at 76, he now looks at his body in the mirror, and he still works out every day. But he goes, I don't like what I see. It's like the muscles aren't quite there. And he goes, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do, but my body's breaking down. That's just what is. He goes, I still have the same enthusiasm. He goes, I love seeing mountains. And he didn't mean literal mountains. He means I like seeing challenges. Like his thing is, I love a challenge. And he goes, I don't care if my body's breaking down. I'm doing what I can. And I'm still looking for whatever challenges are in my life. He goes, because that's where you learn everything, is the challenge. So it's just pushing against resistance. And then also, celebrating yourself. I mean, I think, also people like you and I think we're probably, I shouldn't speak for you, I'll speak for myself. I can be very hard on myself. I can be very mean to myself. I could say, well, why don't I have this? Or why I must not like myself because I don't have this. I haven't accomplished this. I didn't get to the gym today. So that must mean I'm X, I'm fill in the blank. And I have to be very careful because that's all programming from my childhood. So I could say, DJ's running that little pattern again where he beats himself up. I know that that's not particularly helpful for me. So I'm able to say, okay, what does DJ need? What is he really feeling? Oh, he's really feeling sad. Okay, what is people who need sad? They need support. I'm gonna reach out to a friend. I'm gonna reach out to family. I'm gonna talk about my sadness because that's really what's happening. It's getting more aware of what one needs when one needs it. That to me has been really, really important too. So that way, when these urges happen or these feelings happen, I can have a better option to I have more choice. So I have the ability to say, okay, what do I want to do with this? Whereas before I would just be in the experience and I wouldn't be able to find that escape hatch.
I absolutely love that. I heard this wonderful thing. It said, most people are so harsh on themselves. If their friend was in their situation and they were talking to their friend, they would be so much nicer and more supportive.
They wouldn't have any friends.
Yeah, exactly. If they treat their friends like they treat themselves. And I think that's so true. Right. So many high achievers are their own harshest critic. And that's something that I'm really struggling with is for the first couple of decades of my life, I was always about accomplishment. And now I'm much more about happiness. And I'm trying to be more tolerant of different things. And I'm trying to just have more love for people. And that includes love for myself. Because if you analyze and we use Arnold Schwarzenegger as an example, he was always disclaimer when he said "fuck your freedoms" during COVID, my heart broke because I was like, if that guy was a young bodybuilder, do you really think he wouldn't go to the gym because of COVID? That guy would have broken down the doors. So I was a little sad when he said that, but I'm a huge fan of him. And he was kind of a childhood hero growing up in the 80s, like I did, and larger than life figure. But what impressed me so much about him was he was a millionaire from real estate investment in Santa Monica before he made $1 million in film. So you can basically look at this guy and you can say he was the world-class bodybuilder. He was a millionaire real estate investor. He was the top action star of his era. And then he was the governor of California and he married a Kennedy. I mean, and he had a family like that. He's not perfect. He had the affair and whatever. But as a person who wants to have goals and climb mountains, no one has climbed more different mountains than him. I mean, he's had an incredible life. And I think I've always looked up to people like that because it's hard enough to achieve excellence in one field. Try and do it at 3, 4, 5. I mean, that's just insane. And that's my goal too. I do want to climb different mountaintops. I don't want to be doing the same thing at 70 that I was doing at 20. I want to be growing and I want to be evolving.
Yeah, same with me. I try to stay out of consumerism as much as I can, meaning consuming content, consuming entertainment. Obviously, we all need to do that. And it's great and fun and it's great entertainment and it's relaxing or it's stimulating. I have no issues with people, entertaining themselves, being entertained, but just be careful, be mindful of how much time you're spending in receiving. Like, it's an old Adam Carolla quote that I just loved. He says, don't spend as much time visiting other people's museums, create your own museum, which I always thought that is brilliant. Don't walk around other people's museums exclusively, build your own museum. But, it's just like this year, it's funny. I'm not doing cardio and I'm not doing a stretch. And I know it's like, okay, this is the year I have to do cardio and I have to start stretching. Like, it's not enough for me. This is my own personal belief. I'm not here to tell anyone else what to do. But for me, strength training, I was like, I just have to do strength training. That'll be enough. And 3.5 years later, I'm like, no, I know I need to do cardio. So, so I'm getting a Peloton and I'm just going to start doing cardio and whatever. But for stretch, I've never been a flexible person. And I'm like, I would like to be flexible. From everything I read, there's health benefits. It's a good idea, but I'm not flexible. I've never stretched in my life. And so I started going to a stretching place where I go 3 times a week now, and they stretch me out like I'm some sort of athlete, which I'm not. But it's great. I'm getting the results just because I found something new to do. Like, so I think I just, I want everybody listening, just start making progress towards whatever it is you want to do. As long as it's healthy and it's in your best interest, just start. All you got to do is start. You don't have to think about, like, I literally have never been able to touch my toes. I probably will never be able to touch my toes, standing straight legged. That's okay. I don't care. I don't care if I ever touch my toes, but I do care that I'm flexible so that I live a long life. Because I'm curious about you, because I want to ask you about you're very modest, but you have had some incredible accomplishments in not only in business, but specifically in the field of sports, where I always love people who are excellent in sports, because I do believe, for the most part, sports is a meritocracy, right? It's all based on performance. Anyone is eligible. Now, you could argue that people with disadvantaged backgrounds aren't going to have access to certain things. True, but for those that do have access, anyone can rise to the top. You have done that. What lessons did you learn from winning Golden Gloves? Being successful in sports, is that been how does that work for you? So you accomplished this big event, this big accomplishment. What happens after that for you?
Well, to get to anything, and actually, out of all the things I've accomplished, winning the Golden Gloves was one of the most proud things that I had, because at the time, like later on when I was fighting MMA, I was pretty wealthy, and I kind of took a bit of a backseat from trading, and I wasn't doing much at all. I literally lived for fighting and for training. But when I won the Golden Gloves, I had 4 fights in the space of about 2.5 weeks. And every day I was working on the trading floor, which is very physically demanding. I'm standing up, pushing and shoving for trades, and my brain is working. I'm a million miles a minute trying to listen to 10 different brokers screaming, look at the price, the underlying price, look at my option prices, doing mental arithmetic in my head. The exhaustion you feel after a day of trading is palpable, even at the young age of 26. And the pressure I had from all the guys in the pit so I had my ex-girlfriend at the time, I had my close friends that were there, I had all my peers that I traded with who were all older than me. There was an immense amount of pressure. And then every time I won a match, they literally raised my hand, and I couldn't even enjoy it, because the first thing I thought about was, I'm going to come back in 3 days and fight another winner, because it's a knockout tournament. And in my weight, there was typically, 18 to 20 people. So it was between 4 and 5 matches to win. And so, but it took me 3 years to win. And the first year, I think I got, actually both first and second years, I think I got robbed in decisions. I think I won those fights. They were close, but the intensity of my training for that, I realized very early on that amateur boxing is so explosive. It's 3 2-minute rounds, and you have to be in the most insane cardio, because someone can be a better technical boxer, but if you're in the physical shape, I was like, I'm going to outwork them. So I realized I used to train with kids that would, I had these 2 brothers, Famina and Alejandro. Shout out to Famina and Alejandro if they listen to this. They were fantastic boxers. They boxed in the silver gloves as kids. They had all these fights. They grew up boxing. And they were so much technically better than me that the only way I could compete with them is by being like a young Roberto Duran and just making it a brawl and being in such good shape. They could hit me, but every time they hit me, I would hit them 2 or 3. And so I had developed a style that was incredibly aggressive, and it was all about just pressure. And the year I won, I stopped 3 of the 4 opponents, including in the final, which was 1 round. And I was just in such good shape. And so I had such an appreciation, and it's so good for life, because that's the ultimate growth mindset. You said that there's combat sports in general, there's a very low barrier to entry. It's not like British polo where you need to have a horse and all this fancy equipment. If you go to boxing gyms, you're going to see some of the toughest people in society with the most disadvantaged backgrounds, and they're flourishing because you don't need a lot. You can grab a pair of old beat up boxing gloves in the corner and just get to work, So that idea of meritocracy, I think, was so healthy, and just the growth mindset. I was just listening to a podcast earlier today. It was a study for children and saying, and I knew this, but it was a good reminder. If you congratulate your child for performance, that's really bad. But if you congratulate them for effort, it's promoting that growth mindset. And that's something that I got 100% through all athletic things is you put the work in, you're going to do well. Because I don't think, like, if I look at pure boxing as an example, I think I'm pretty good in terms of cardio. I'm pretty good in terms of mental strength. I don't think I'm very athletically gifted. And I think that I beat a lot of people that had better attributes than me physically because I had a stronger mind. And I developed that stronger mind through absolutely brutal. I can't tell you some of the training sessions I did where it's just pure cardio to develop an engine that would never get tired. They were so insane. I remember one guy I fought in the gloves. He looked like a little miniature Mike Tyson, just came out of prison, tattoos all over his head and face and neck. And he was so jacked. He had serrations on his muscles. And I remember looking at him. It was funny. It was an earlier round. It was like the second round. And there was all these people. And I was like, oh, some poor guy's got to fight that guy. That guy looks like the scariest guy I've ever seen. And then we got matched up together. It was me and him in the quarterfinals. And I'm like, you're going to be kidding. All these other guys. And I remember, so I had that feeling like, oh, geez, how am I going to beat this guy? And DJ, I remember, and it took me a few seconds. And I remember thinking, you know what? He might beat me, but I'm in such good shape. I know I can be there in his face for every minute of every round. And because I've done the work, I had the confidence, because you can't fake confidence. Confidence comes from doing the work. And I was like, you know what? I ended up stopping him around. And that was the thing. The only guy that went the distance was the least physically intimidating guy in my bracket, but he was a very experienced boxer. He was a little bit older. He didn't have a particularly athletic body, but he was incredibly technical. So it just goes to show, number one, a lot of time it's not about what's on the initial look. It's about, you can't tell someone if they're going to be, a lot of people are very athletic, but they might not look athletic. A lot of people might be very successful, but they might dress down and be very humble. A lot of people that are braggarts tend to not be very successful. So like, don't take people, you got to be very careful about taking people at face value. And I just think having the idea of a growth mindset, definitely from sports, sets you off life. And also the idea, like we talked about earlier, about discipline. You don't give it's not about, oh, I'm going to work out today because I feel good, or I'm not going to call my 8 clients today because I feel like chatting to 8 people. It's like, you don't even give yourself the option. You know what it takes to, right. You have your goal and your plan, and you just do it every day.
100%. If I give myself the option, it's the reason why I meal prep. If I give myself the option, I will choose poorly. And so I literally make, and this, again, it's anybody could do this. I literally make a healthy salad every morning with, then I have a little can of tuna. That's going to be my lunch. And then I have, a healthy meal that's kind of after that. And then I have a healthy dinner, but I have to plan it all out ahead of time, because otherwise my urges will kick in and I'll eat something that is ultra high processed and probably not good for me. So yeah, it's restricting choice. I actually think restricting choice is a really good idea, because we know that people can rise to the occasion when they don't have other options. And right now we have so much choice. I think it can be very difficult for anyone to sort of hyper focus on something. But yeah, don't give yourself the choice. My mom used to say, my mom's, somebody who works out a lot, has always done that. And I said, how do you get yourself to do it? Because she doesn't like working out. And she goes, I put my shoes on the side of my bed and I just step into them right out of bed. And she goes, I don't want to work out, but if I do that, I know I'm going to go. And I was like, brilliant. It's whatever works. And so I agree. Whatever gets you to the thing, do that, and don't worry about how you feel about it. Don't try to persuade yourself that you want to do something you don't want to do. It's okay to not want to do it, but do it anyway. Like, it's okay to go, I hate doing this and I'm going to do it. Like, all of that is fine. That's called being dialectical. That's part of DBT. It's okay to feel, have a preference, and you can still do something at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, no, I was just going to ask you, I know you have your real estate license, but you never practiced real estate, and you love doing this podcast. You're a creative person. How did that happen? How did you get into this niche of keeping it real running the podcast?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Keeping It Real. Anyone out there who's a realtor or real estate agent, please consider checking it out. I interview the top 1% of agents across the country, like Lawrence, and ask them, how'd you do that? And we just crossed over our 500th episode. How did I do it? It's hard to remember at this point, but I do remember. It was really simple. I'm always interested in stories, people, how people do things. You are the same way. You and I are kind of, brothers from another mother. And I am always interested in how people achieve excellence. And I know that success leaves clues, right? So there's always it's not magic that usually people achieve success. Sometimes it is, but usually it's not. It's usually just a lot of really specific action that they took. So I thought, well, I don't know anything about real estate. I'm not a realtor. How do I help other realtors when I'm not even a realtor myself? Well, I probably should talk to the top realtors, modeling, and so I just thought, well, wouldn't it be cool because I thought, well, I live in Chicago and there's obviously there's 47,000 realtors here in Chicago, but I thought, there's realtors in other parts of the country. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do something that would help other realtors? At the very least, it's fun for me. Even though I'm not a realtor, I can still learn from some of these top agents about what they're doing to run their successful businesses. I can apply that to myself. And at the same time, maybe I could, help somebody out who's a realtor. And we have realtors at our company, so maybe they would want to listen to it. And it just seemed like a good idea. And I thought, hey, well, I'll give it a shot. And so I promised to do it for a year. That was difficult because I had to do everything myself. And I thought, we'll see what happens. I don't know if anyone is even going to care about this. And people did start to care about it. And so, not at first. It took about a year, or I don't even remember anymore. I think I didn't look at the numbers because I thought that would be a very bad idea to look at the numbers because it would just bum me out. I knew the numbers were never going to. In fact, I don't even look at the numbers now. I force myself to once a month, just from a business perspective. I'm I need to know my numbers, but I hate it because I have such a reaction to it. It's if our numbers go down 3%, I'm oh, what did I do? I did something wrong. It could just be the time of the year, or it could be my show's not as good. I don't know. But regardless, it's going to make me feel a certain way that isn't necessarily something that I will be kind to myself. So I try to be really careful about measuring, because I'm always going to measure under where I want to be. I'm always going to, if I just crossed over 3 million downloads recently, but I should be at 5 million. It's what does it matter? Who cares? At the end of the day, yes, from a business perspective, it matters. But what does it say about me as a person? Very little. But all I really wanted to do with the show was just create this content that other people could enjoy, because I knew at the very least, if it was helpful to at least somebody, then I would get to feel good about that. And that was important to me because, you talked about being on your deathbed, and it's what do you think about? Well, I don't know, because I haven't been on my deathbed yet, but I suspect, like you were saying, I'll think about family, friends. I'll think about not so much accomplishments, because who cares? It'll be more about how did I contribute, right? What did I help my little corner of the universe? Did I do something that maybe helps somebody? And it doesn't have to be a big thing. I don't think I do big things. I do a lot of small things, but I like doing small things. So I don't know. Now it's like a grind. I've just been doing it for so many years that I'm just going to probably do it for the rest of my life. But it's a really good idea because people like it. We have sponsors, so it makes a bit of money, and it's helpful, and that's the most important thing. I just want to be helpful, because I want to feel good about myself, and that is one way that I can feel good about myself.
Well, let me ask you this, DJ, because that's amazing. 3 million downloads. Just crossed 500 episodes. How much do you think you've improved as a human just from talking to people that are excellent in one field? How much do you think it's your life is, you don't even practice real estate, but I'm sure the self-education and the wisdom you've got is invaluable.
It's like going to the gym. I have a trainer, right? And once in a while we do a new exercise or a new movement. I mean, it happens. We learn a more complicated movement. I'm able to, eventually once I get pull-ups up, I'm going to hopefully do what I think they call it muscle up. Is that where you pull yourself up and then you pull yourself up again? Yeah. So my trainer's trying to do that for herself. She's been working out for 13 years. So maybe I may or may never get to a muscle up, but those are really hard. Can you do a muscle up, by the way? Have you ever been able to do
I've never even tried. My elbows, I've had elbow surgery of both my elbows.
Oh, you have elbow problems.
Pull-ups are hard enough.
They are hard enough. Yeah. Yeah. If you can crank out 4 pull-ups, I consider, yeah, that's about all I can, maybe 5 on a good day. But anyway, I'm sorry. I got lost in my, my metaphor, but the idea was that I'm doing basically the same movements, pretty much every time. I'm lifting heavy weights. I'm making sure my core is engaged. I'm breathing out on the, hard part and in on the easy part. I'm trying to do all the right things. But the reality of it is I'm not learning new things. And when I'm doing my podcast, I'm not learning necessarily new ideas from these top agents. But why do I go to a trainer 3 times a week if I'm not learning anything new? Well, I go to make sure my form is, she's making sure I'm safe and she's getting me to work. But the thing is I get to be around her. She knows what she's doing. She's the expert and I just do what I'm told. So the reason why I love the podcast, even though I'm not a realtor, is I get to be around excellent people 2 to 3 times a week. And yes, to answer your question, it has absolutely helped me in my life because I take those lessons from those people and I just apply them in other ways. So how lucky am I that, yes, it's a bit of a grind to do it and it's a lot of work. And I paid to do it for the first like 4 or 5 years. Literally, thousands upon thousands of dollars I paid to do this stupid show. Thankfully, now it pays me a little bit, but and it pays for a staff, and I'm very grateful for that. But more importantly, is I get to be around excellence. So that's really why I did it. I wanted to help people, but be around excellence, and people rub off on one another. If I can just be around enough successful people, we learn sometimes that way. It kind of rubs off.
100%. One thing, my shout out to Nick Gregoriades. He was my original podcast mentor, and he's actually paused he had many different podcasts, but he was on Joe Rogan's podcast back in the day, and he was been doing this for over 10 years. And he said to me, Lawrence, you're always consuming things. You have this, you're always reading books and you're thinking about things, but you're not really doing much creative things. Where he said, if you do a podcast, you're putting out some good energy. You're going to improve as a person. You're going to talk to wonderful people, but you're going to exercise that creative aspect of yourself, which I never thought about. And I know you're a writer, so I'm sure you have that sense of creation. And I could tell when we spoke, I mean, I kind of touched on it, but we had two episodes on your show, and I remember thinking you are a lot more than just a real estate podcast host. And that's why we spent an hour not even talking about real estate, because you're a very philosophical guy. You're a thinker. You've worked on yourself. You've got so many ideas on what makes a good life. And I think ultimately all roads lead back to that one question: like, why are we here? What's made a good life? What is a good life?
Yeah, for me, it's all about managing some of my challenges. Like for me, I had to, because I have to take medicine for antidepressants. I have certain things I was born with, or maybe it was how I was raised. I mean, there's lots of theories about challenges, traumas, and et cetera. But I just wasn't happy, and so it was like I sort of. Part of me is like really jealous of people that are happy enough where they don't have to sort of go down the path that maybe people like me and maybe you as well go down to find that level of fulfillment. But I had to, because I just didn't have it. And so for me, I explore medical options, I explore psychological options, I explore physical options like staying in shape, eating, going to see the right doctors, getting on the right meds, talking it out with my therapist, having just all of these things that are getting in my own way, having different ways to address them is really, because we all have stuff. And if you can figure out a way to cope with your challenges, with your pain, that to me is the most successful people I know. The people that can like handle pain, whether it's sadness, fear, anger, frustration, whatever it might be. If you can sit and coexist with pain. I actually asked my therapist that on the second, I've been with her like 13 years now. And I think it was the second or the third meeting. I said, what's the goal? Like, when am I going to be fixed? Like, does it take a year? Does it take 2 years? She's like, yeah, you're not going to be fixed. You're just going to learn to coexist with your pain. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. And I didn't really understand it at the time. Now I understand it. It's okay. Because if I can be depressed, if I can feel depression and still move forward in my life, and believe me, I have tremendous empathy for anyone who is stuck in depression. But if you can if you don't have to conquer depression and you can just still move through life, it's a pretty good life because you can still experience the tough parts of life and continue to move forward. So I've always been seeking for that how do you move forward thing because I can't fix things like depression. It should be a medical thing in my head. Like, okay, so I take a med for it, no problem. But there's lots of other things I do proactively to help me, keep moving forward in life because I don't know another way. I just don't. I wish. Part of me wishes that I didn't have to do as much as I do. And I'm very performative. So that can be difficult because then it's like, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing? So I have to learn a little bit more stillness, but you've achieved a lot and in business and as well as in sports and in your relationship, you have a loving relationship. Your wife is amazing. Your little one is amazing. But I imagine it's kind of, I had this thought the other day. I just want to, maybe we can end with this, but I had this thought, I don't know that it's a really a brilliant thought, but it meant a lot to me. I was feeling badly I was judging myself for not having certain things. This was like over the weekend. And I was on Friday night and I thought, well, okay, well, what if I had all the things I'm wishing that I don't have right now that I wish I did have? What if I did have everything? What if I still felt this exact same way? And I went, I probably would feel exactly the same way. So it was like, oh, it's that wherever you go, there you are thing. Like wherever you go, there you are. And so it's like, oh, it's not all the things. It's not all the accomplishments because I'm still me. I still show up as me. So it's how do I cope with me and still happily achieve, but in a happily, not from a DJ's worthless and needs to achieve, but no, DJ's a pretty good guy and he wants to do more in his life.
Well, I think I think it's that the stoicism of the Stoic philosophy of it's much easier to change our mindset than our environments. And I'll let you know,
100%.
I'll let you know, I don't want people, I've done some incredible things and people see me traveling around the world and I, did a beautiful rehab to my home, but I'm 44 years old and I've made a lot of money in my life. And I've also lost a lot of money. I've been screwed over several times. And I recently just got screwed over by a developer I partnered with. And he didn't just screw me over. He screwed over my dad and my uncle. And I'm not going to let them lose any money. So I'm going to pay them back. And we had lawsuits and it's been a nightmare. I'm still kind of dealing with that. And it really bummed me out. And I had that exact same thought as you. It's like, man, at this stage of my life, with the money I've made in my different careers, I should have a lot more zeros in my bank account. I shouldn't have very little zeros. But then I thought, you know what? I've enjoyed a lot of experiences and life isn't about zeros in the bank account. And I want the life that you're saying where every day is a struggle. I want to be battling. I want to, when life's over, I want to leave death nothing but a burnt out candle like that. That's the way I want to go through life. And so I think you and I we're kindred spirits in that way, DJ, is as Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. And I spoke to a friend of mine, I'm feeling sorry for myself because I got screwed over by someone who came to my wedding and I thought he was salt of the earth guy.
Yeah.
And I thought about it and I spoke to a friend of mine from California last night who just had all these construction loans and with interest rates going up, he said he's going to have to declare bankruptcy. He's like, I'm going to probably lose everything. And he's a few years older than me. And we were talking and I was like, man, the best advice I could give is listen, just invest in yourself, just keep trying to exercise, guard your mental health, be selfish. This is the time to be selfish because you're going through hell and you're going to be the best person you can be by guarding yourself. But I just think you and I have that same approach, DJ, where a lot of people might look at us and be like, oh, I want to start a podcast. I look at DJ and he's got 500 episodes. He's got millions of downloads.
Trust me, you don't want to do what I do. It's a pain in the ass, but it works. I like it. But it is not fun. I mean, it's fun, but look, running at 1 a.m. in the morning isn't what anyone would want to choose to do, but you do it because it's good for you.
Yes. And I think that, but it's really good to hear these. I think it's really good for people to hear these stories because so many people look at, okay, I'm going to get here in my life and then I'm going to have the gold watch and I'm going to enjoy my retirement sitting on a beach. And that I used to think like that. I used to think I get to a certain level of success. I tick the boxes and I'm happy. And that's not what life is. Life is about, there's an old wrestling expression, embrace the grind. And that's what life is. You embrace every day and you attack it the best you can. And some days you're going to fall short and you're going to love yourself because we're human, like you said. And other days you're going to achieve great things and you're going to be really proud of yourself and you should enjoy that. But all in all, I mean, you've given me some therapy today, DJ. This has been amazing. I knew it would be, just because I know the kind of we're not super close friends, but I've seen that we talk every now and again, and I know your mindset. And this is exactly what I expected. Just that we'll have to do a part two, because I've got a whole sheet of things here that I want to talk to you about, which we didn't even get to because we're having such a nice time. But be gentle with yourself, brother, because it's amazing. Yes. Millions of downloads, and you are impacting lives. And I remember when I did my first couple of podcasts, which were horrible. And I had an old friend of mine I hadn't spoken to for years, I used to fight with. And he sent me this lovely message. He said, man, I listened to you today and it really helped me. And I was like, man, I hadn't spoken to the guy in 10 years at least. And I was like, man, it's so crazy. You put that stuff out there in the universe, but of those 3 million downloads, how many of them had incredible impacts? Like, we never know the impact that we can say, we can give people. And it's been beautiful. And I can't really talk about it publicly, but I've got the most incredible story that's going to come out in about 6 months from an early episode I did about 2 people meeting that were never supposed to meet, and it changed their lives. And it's incredible. Like these stories, who thinks, like, I have a little local podcast that I follow my passion, I talk to people I'm interested in, and it changes lives. It's beautiful. And so how many of lives have you changed? So I want to end with just keep giving you a shout out, DJ, because you are a great guy.
Thank you.
And I love you, brother. You're a really good guy.
Thank you. That's very much appreciated. And I do feel that. And I am much better at celebrating whatever accomplishments I have. And if I can help other people, that's just a bonus. And yeah, it is nice to get those emails from listeners who are like, you had a significant impact on my business, which is so funny to me, because I'm like, I'm not even a realtor, but the show helps them, which is great. That's the whole intention of the show. So I love that. It's really a selfish thing. It's for me, because I want to be around excellence, and it helps people at the same time. So it's selfish and selfless at the same time. And if you can find something, not you, Lawrence, but if listeners can find something, that maybe it's a volunteer effort or it's something, being of service. If you can find that in your life, no matter what's going on, that's going to be a guaranteed win. Like, even in the worst possible part of your life, if you have something that is being of service to someone else, you will feel good about that, at least. And we need to stack positives, especially when we're in a depressed state. When we're in life is going to happen, horrible tragedy is going to happen. It happens to all of us. If you have things that are guaranteed wins in your life, like for me, it's volunteering with a few various things I won't get into, but they're guaranteed wins for me. I know I'm going to feel good about that. So I build that into my life, just like working out, right? I build it into my life because I want to live a long life. So I just want to say one last thing. You were talking about the path. The path is hell. The path is you are trudging in blood. That is the path. And you know what? It's not for the weak of heart. Obviously, Lawrence can talk about all of the physical pain he has put his body through to get to some of the accomplishments he's done and continues to do. And it's all about getting through hell. Just like Winston Churchill said, you just keep going. It is the truth. It's the only way through. The only way to Ryan, who wrote the Stoic,
Ryan Holiday.
The obstacle is the way.
Yeah, Ryan Holiday.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan Holiday. So he wrote The Obstacle is the Way, and that's true. But I would rephrase it to say hell is the path, because you have to put yourself into that. But it's a good thing. And, it's just the way it is. And if you can do that and tolerate hell, if you can tolerate hell, you'll be unstoppable in life.
What a beautiful way to end this. Thank you, DJ. I couldn't agree more. The hell is the path.
Well, on the most depressing message ever on your podcast, but actually, I hope it's inspiring in some way.